We're live, but we must. We must. And I'll tell you, we shall. Let it breathe. Hang tight just for a second here, gang. Got to get Facebook fully locked in here with us, and I got to pull up the release so we can go through the head-to-heads here in a minute. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, you know him, you love him. He is dropping phones and doing things that go bang against the microphone. Zack Kelberman. Zack, how have you enjoyed your NFL weekend, big dog?
I mean, the Kansas City-Buffalo game, wow. The Jets beating the Packers, wow. I love the fact when the Broncos don't play on Sunday, they play Monday or a night game. It allows me to watch the rest of the NFL slate. And just the unpredictability, Chad, the parity around the NFL is crazy. And I'll have to see how the games play out every week. It's a shame we're not doing the pick'em anymore each and every week for every game because you'd be whipping my tail at this point.
Dude, I was watching that game. And I loved seeing Von Miller sack Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, it just gets you in the feels when you see that. But I had to think to myself, Zack, where were these Von Miller sacks on Pat Mahomes from 2016 through, when he left last fall?
Remember he wrapped him up and Patrick Mahomes had the left-handed throw?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's like a close but no cigar thing in Denver. Like, there's something about the energy, something about, I don't know what it is, dude. Like, there's really something to this idea that John Elway cut a deal with the football devil or something to bring home Super Bowl 50, knowing what the price to be paid after might be. And that is, it's almost like this team has a curse. Now, I don't want to be too myopic here and make it sound like because Russell Wilson said on Thursday, Zack, or Friday, whatever day it was, everything we want is still out in front of us. There's a lot of season left to be played. Don't go panicking.
Yeah, I mean, it's talk is cheap, though, at this point for me, Chad. I'm not panicking. People are calling me a downer now and being too negative and skeptical or whatever, but the time for talk is over. We're in week 7 coming up, or week 6 with the Broncos, the last game. They're struggling right now. Russell Wilson is not the quarterback they thought he would be, the quarterback any of us thought he would be, and he has to step it up, point blank period. Don't tell me, show me on game day.
Silent One, thank you for jumping in early, my friend, with a super chat, helping us keep the lights on here at MHH. We do appreciate you, big dog. He says, today was a bad day for George Paton, Mike McDaniel, Brian Daboll, and Von Miller to a lesser extent. Zack, what do you think of this?
I'm not going to criticize Paton too much for Von Miller. He got a huge contract, and I'm happy for Von. He landed with the championship contender. I think the Bills are just destined to win the whole thing this year, but that's neither here nor there. Brian Daboll, Mike McDaniel, yeah, even though Brian Daboll was already pretty much wink, wink, nod, nod, had an agreement with the Giants, he was going to take his general manager with him as well.
Yeah.
McDaniel, though, I mean, without a quarterback like Tua, he's looked really pedestrian. And the thing on Von Miller, Randy Gregory is not a bad consolation prize, if you even want to term him that way. He was wrecking shop when he was on the field. Shame he can't stay healthy, but he is a game changer, and I don't fault George Paton for splashing in those waters.
Sam Bam, thank you, brother. It's great to see you. Love your hat. It's dope. Guys, you can get one at huddleuppod.com. That's still the merch store URL. Appreciate you, Sam. He says, hello. Hoping the mini bye, the 11-day break, can get the Broncos a win tomorrow night. Go Broncos. We agree with that, big dog. Zack, what's first things first? Now, I'm gonna cut a couple things away here to limit your response in that run the ball, score more points. You can't say that. What do the Broncos have to do to win against the Chargers? Like, what's the key here for you?
It's pretty, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's the same principle every week. You feel good enough in the defense, as ravaged as they are, as ravaged as this roster is. You feel good enough that the defense is going to keep you in the game. So they'll be able to limit Mahomes, limit that Chargers offense, and keep the Broncos within striking distance. It comes down to the quarterback, as always, and more specifically, Russell Wilson has to have a better game or a comparable game to Justin Herbert. It really is as simple as that. He is the detriment around this team right now because he's not playing to the level the Broncos paid him to play at or, invested so much for him to play at, and it's affecting everyone else on that offense. So, again, That's what it comes down to, Chad. Quarterback is where it's at.
I agree. If you really boil this one down, you want your Denver Broncos to emerge from Los Angeles with a 3-3 record. Russell Wilson is the key. Is he going to finally kind of slough off this bad juju and this kind of punch drunk, nowhere close enough to the standard thing that has kind of been the first 5 weeks of the season? I mean, even in victory, Russell Wilson, let's face it, has been less than stellar. The 2 wins the Broncos currently have, Zach, all you can really say about Russell Wilson in those games is, hey, at least he saved his best for last. He provided in each of those games, respectively, that clutch fourth quarter drive, find a way, make a way kind of veteran mindset to get the Broncos over the hump. And in this one, dude, if the Broncos don't get you can't just get a good enough performance out of Russell Wilson. This is a premier quarterback. I've kind of been a Justin Herbert skeptic, Zach, over the years, but he is a premier quarterback, and you got to fight fire with fire. So I'll agree with you, dude, that in this one, key number one, tippity top, very most important key, Russell Wilson. Where are you at? Where are you at, Russ? Are you still that 9-time Pro Bowler destined for the Hall, or are you the guy that people are going to say through the lens of history, Zach, was ruined by Nathaniel Hackett?
I can attest to what you were saying, because the silver linings we picked out of the Broncos wins or losses where Russell Wilson didn't play up to par, where he made a fourth quarter throw or one of his best throws was dropped in the end zone. That's not good enough. That's good enough when you have a quarterback like Kenny Pickett starting for you or Geno Smith starting, not when you pay $250 million and trade what you traded for. More specifically to that, though, I hate the fact I didn't say it the first time. The Broncos need to establish their will in the trenches. They need to run the freaking football. I hate to sound like a broken record, chap, but this opponent in particular, bleeding 130 yards per game on the ground. They rank 25th in the NFL. I really want to see what Latavius Murray does in conjunction with Melvin Gordon and Mike Boone.
Agreed. Shout out here, by the way, Big Earn. It's great to see you on Facebook, my friend. Greg Smith in the house with us as well. I'm seeing here in the chat. We are without our producer this evening, so we might not be quite as Johnny's on the spot as we might normally be in the chat. So if I missed you, know that we love you. John, Juno, appreciate you, big dog. Dave, Vasquez, what's up? Cristiano, though, down in Brazil, keeping the flame alive. And I like this. It says, good evening, Priest. The turnaround is coming. ... fast. See, now listen, Zach, here's the thing. I agree with you. Well, first of all, let me say this. I maintain always, it's like a 24/7 thing, a constant posture of optimism on every front, okay? I always maintain that possibility. I want to put out those vibes into the universe that this can and will happen, all right? But when it comes to the Denver Broncos, even though I'm keeping that open and that optimism is alive, Zach, I'm with you in that the time for talking and the encouragement that we get from the front office or from the coach podium or from Russell Wilson, I don't want to hear it. I want to see it. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing about what could be, tired of hearing about what's coming down the pike. I want to see it. Cristiano, appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, and I was a proponent of Russell Wilson, obviously, and we both laughed off and defended him from the criticism he was too corny or cheesy or whatever, but that whole let's ride where he barely squeaked it out, Chad, so sheepishly over the microphone behind the podium after the worst game in a Broncos uniform, my skin literally crawled watching that. I don't want to hear that anymore. It's not cute. It's not funny. It's not going to get the fans going. What Will is producing on the field like you're supposed to. So no talk, all action.
Save it for the wins, all right? Save it for the wins. It's becoming contrived, forced. It just doesn't feel genuine. And maybe that's been lost a long time ago, Zach, because he just kept saying it over and over. Long before he ever actually suited up as a Bronco, it lost its kind of originality, I guess. But, this is a game of inches. And as much as we laugh about Vic Fangio's pitch to John Elway back in the day that, hey, death by inches and all that, it is true. And I was reminded of that, Zach, by over the weekend watching another one of Kurt Warner's Study Ball episodes on YouTube, which to me are one of the most illuminating when it comes to YouTube film guys, just because, again, this is a Hall of Famer. All right. He knows what he's talking about. It's not just some like savvy guy with a microphone and a clicker. Now, one of the things he brought up, Zach, is he brought up the Josh Allen and the Bills and Russell Wilson and the Broncos. And each play, he'd show one from Josh Allen that was play A, and then he'd show a same version of that same play with Russell Wilson and the Broncos, right, in their offenses respectively. And you would see how one team would find a way to execute it and the other team found a way not to, etc. And one of the takeaways from that simply is the Broncos, believe it or not, have been so close, dude, to actually being a juggernaut. Like a few little things offensively. I know it sounds ridiculous at this point after what we saw against the Colts, our last sample size from the Broncos. It sounds ridiculous, but a couple of breaks go this way, that way, the game of inches. We could be talking about a few of these games where the Broncos are scoring in the 30s and they are blowing out opponents, but it's not happening. Why? And then you look at the Bills. The film Warner broke down, notwithstanding. Look at today what they did against the Chiefs in their house at Arrowhead. It is a game of inches. And Russell Wilson, Zach, has traditionally been a quarterback who more often than not finds a way to capitalize on those inches, right? The margin of error typically swings on his side. It's not happening up to this point. We can sit here scratching our heads wondering why, etc. But the bottom line is it hasn't happened. The inches have not gone in Denver's favor. And until we see it come out in the wash, I just don't want to blow skirt up anyone's smoke on this anymore.
It is a game of inches for sure. It's also a game of good fortune. And remember the old Fort Minor song, remember the name, Chad? 10% luck, 20% skill. There's a little bit that goes into that, little truth behind that. You have to have the ball literally and figuratively bouncing your way. You have to survive the war of attrition, and you do that by having fortune on your side. The Broncos haven't ever since Peyton Manning strolled out of Denver. But if you put on the tape from this season, I cannot recount how many times I've seen the ball fall away from the Broncos. I mean, in the Colts game alone, Damari Mathis, how do you not pick that off? They strip sack Matt Ryan. They should have ended the game. They can't fall on the football. That's been happening the entire season. So the feeling I'm getting, and I hope I'm wrong come tomorrow night, is it's just not the Broncos' year. The ball is not bouncing in their direction. What they can do is control their production, though, and Russell Wilson can step his game up because typically the good teams get those breaks. And right now the Broncos are not a good football team.
Plum Bob, that's right. The good teams, they're not slave to Murphy's Law. Good teams make their own luck. Plum Bob, appreciate the super chat, big dog. He says, I'm going into work early tomorrow so that I can catch the game. Don't make me regret it, Broncos. Amen. Jacob Foster, known affectionately as the Silent One, not to usurp Silent One on you. I wonder if they're the same. I don't think they are, but you have to wonder. Jacob, thank you for the stars, big dog. You are a prince. Howie frickin' Day in the frickin' house. Sometimes it's good, Zach, just to hear what Howie frickin' Day has to say on a frickin' subject of, you decide. But Howie, it's good to see you. Thank you for the stars, my dog. Let me get to Phil Mclaughlin also jumping in. What's up, bro? He says, any news on what our starting O-line is going to be? Hashtag Go Broncos. MHH for life. Zach, what's the latest we heard from? I don't think Coach Hackett was trying to give the opponent a preview, but it's going to be Calvin, left tackle, right? It's going to be, Dalton Reisner's questionable. Doesn't sound like they made a decision to pull Lloyd Cushenberry out of the starting lineup, so he's your center. Miners, questionable. Right? I'm pretty sure Miners is questionable. And then, of course, Billy Turner questionable. Are we going to get what's it going to look like this week?
Who? Billy Turner? Who is that? I mean,
I know.
At this point, we just have to hope that the Broncos can give him a shot. He's been vacillating between practicing in full and practicing on a limited basis. I don't understand what's going on there, but Quinn Miners is the wild card here. They need some power. They need some dog on that offensive line, and Quinn Miners provides that. Reisner, he had back spasms, but from what I understand, these spasms have calmed down, and he should play tomorrow night. So pretty much status quo with the possible exception of Quinn Miners at right guard.
Miguel, appreciate you, buddy. He says, what's up, fellas? I really hope last week was the catalyst to turning the ship around, but I won't hold my breath. I think that'll come a little too late. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, it takes you got to hit rock bottom to really spark a change, all right? You can look at that from a lot of different kind of vantage points when it comes to any particular subject in life. A lot of times that change doesn't happen until someone really reaches the end of their rope, so to speak. They hit that rock bottom and they go, man, I got to make a change. And they're motivated then to change. Same thing can apply to a collective or a team, in this case, Zach, where, things haven't been going great, but they're kind of holding forth. And then there's a straw that kind of breaks the camel's back and everything seems to go against them. They step on their own, whats. And this is a team that had high expectations. So if there ever was going to be a pivot point in this season, like this is where, when they look back on this and they're talking about the turning point, man, it was that Colts loss, man. I agree that should be the turning point. The problem is I have seen nothing so far from this team's coaching staff that gives me any confidence that they have the perception and wherewithal and competency to not only recognize that, Zach, but like do what it takes to turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, the coaching ineptitude, the quarterback poor play, those are recoverable. You can get over those things. You can get better and you can salvage your season. What I'm worried about, Chad, and I've been worried about as of you, are the Broncos too injured to have a productive season? Is the injury bug too much? Have they lost too many players? That I don't know, and that we'll find out as the season goes on. But we kind of feel like we're kicking the can down the road every week. Oh, the Raiders game's going to be the pivot point. The Colts game's going to be where they get going. It's just it hasn't happened to this point. We have to hope it happens on another primetime venue against the Chargers. I have a question for you, though. Everybody else out there, injuries or not, if Brian Daboll was the coach of the Denver Broncos, what would the record be right now? 4-1?
I'd say 4-1, 3-2 at worst. But here's the thing is, little birdie told me, and you kind of hinted around it earlier. By the way, Deanna, that is my mother-in-law's name. So, hey, we love you back. I don't know what's up with that stars problem on Facebook, but appreciate you being with us. Was there a question there? No. Okay. I lost my train of thought here, Zach. What were we talking about? Hit me.
Daboll.
Yes. The little birdie. Thank you. Is that you go, well, why the Sam Hill didn't George Payton at least, he interviewed 10 dudes to replace Vic Fangio. Why was Brian Daboll not amongst them? Well, if you can remember the controversy of the other Brian, what's his last name, dude? The coach is suing the Broncos.
Flores.
Flores. All right. Geez, tonight's not my night when it comes to my recall command. That exposed something, and what it exposed, you didn't have to be an insider for this epiphany, is that the Giants basically, they didn't interview anybody. They knew who they were going to hire from the very beginning, and they made it clear to Daboll, this job is yours if you want it. And so when teams like the Broncos, who had vacancies, and others started calling or the agent to see about, hey, is there an interest here? Could we maybe... The vibe that agent was putting out was, no, Brian's locked in on this Giants opportunity. He's not really trying to split his focus. That's that. So how can you fault George Payton for not hiring Brian Daboll when he didn't even want to talk to the Broncos or any other team for that matter?
Yeah, it was a package deal as well with the, I think his name is Joe Shane, the general manager. Both came over from New York. So it was never going to happen. But, okay, how about this one? Kevin O'Connell. Look what he has the Vikings at right now. I know their roster is probably more talented considering they're not as injury plagued, but it comes down to coaching. I'm not at the point yet where I'm going to criticize Payton for hiring Nathaniel Hackett. I understand why he did it. I want to see a larger sample size, but it really comes down to the head coach, man. Brian Daboll is squeezing a lot of juice out of a roster that's not that talented overall.
Deanna says she was able to subscribe, so thank you. We do appreciate you doing that on Facebook. Can't send stars. Zach, Goodfellas, both of us were these kind of nerdy gangster movie guys. Remember the very first time you see young Tommy address Henry Hill? How does he say his name? Hendry. He says it like that, dude. Hendry. For what it's worth. Deanna, you're two different anecdotes springing forth from your name tonight. We appreciate you. Howie says this, Zach. I hope they let Russ run the hurry up on the opening drive. I want to see if Russ is calling his own plays early. Maybe that way he could get into a better rhythm. What do you think?
It's kind of an extension of the topic or the question we pulled up a couple seconds ago. Is it too little too late for the Broncos? And I feel like if that were to happen, when they do finally get going, it's because they're just going to go out there and play freaking football. Stop overthinking so much. When you have nothing to play for, and I know the Broncos are not at this stage yet, you play looser. You go out there, you just get back to fundamentals, and good things tend to happen even though it's too little too late. So if the Broncos can finally just shake their mental bugaboos and just get over the psychological whatever's haunting them right now on the coaching staff and under center with the quarterback, they can have an explosive offense. There's been glimpses of brilliance outside of the 20s in the Hackett scheme. Russell Wilson's made some nice throws. They just have to put it all together for 60 minutes. That's all we want to see one time.
And I do agree with Russ when he says everything that we want is still on the table. Like they haven't played themselves out of reach of any of their initial objectives for this season. But the more you lose players to the attrition of the injury bug, and the more you drop games, I mean, you start running out of rope. You start running out of opportunity. 19 EHF throwing down a very generous super chat. Thank you, big dog. Really appreciate that. Make sure you connect with us on Twitter because we like to tag and keep in touch with all of our super chat superstars after every single show. Little kind of clout shout out type thing, and our supporters on Facebook with the individual tweet thanking everybody. So he says, I think the reason people became hyped this offseason was because they looked at the Russ trade and ignored all the other holes: a bad O-line, B- receivers, a rookie head coach, etc. The media is partly to blame. Zach, what do you think?
Well, first of all, on this podcast, we can speak for ourselves. We did not ignore bad O-line, specifically right tackle. That is a drum I have been beating for years now, as of Chad, as of a lot of people. So I was mad after the draft, in fact, that the Broncos spent their first 2 picks on another edge rusher and a tight end and ignored right tackle to protect Russell Wilson. Rookie head coach, we didn't know that was going to be a hole at the time, though. You know, Russ, we always took into account it wasn't going to be perfect. He was going to have his hiccups. No one could have predicted, though, a young, passionate, energetic guy like Nathaniel Hackett could be so deer in the headlights in the first couple games of his tenure. I mean, it wasn't just bad, it was epically bad. Who could have seen that coming? But we always allowed there were going to be rookie growing pains. I don't know that we overestimated, Chad. I feel like if you predicted the Broncos to go 14-3, that would be an overestimation. 11-6 was my pick. I think 11-6 or 12-5 was your pick. That was reasonable despite the holes on the roster.
Yeah, this team too. I mean, there's again a double-digit win season. It seems laughable after the crap stinker that they put on tape on Thursday night, but they still have the horses. I mean, you look at this, there's a good chance Justin Simmons will be activated from IR because he, along with 2 other guys, were, including the 3rd rounder, Greg Dulcich, were activated to practice. That gives them a 3-week window before the Broncos have to decide on whether or not to actually promote them back to the active roster. And if they don't within those 21 days, then they are mandated back to IR for the season. But with Caden Stearns, Zach, ruled out of this one already. I think as long as he's good to go health-wise, and Justin Simmons, by the way, I mean, we're talking about an injury he suffered week 1, supposed to be a 3 to 4 week injury. It lines up. I'll be surprised if he's not playing tomorrow. But you got the horses. My point here is that even in the face of all these personnel losses from Javonte Williams, I mean, Tim Patrick before the season even started, we can go on. You got some of these guys are going to be coming back, including Randy Gregory, Justin Simmons, as I mentioned, and you're going to have the horses. You've got the quarterback. I think the big thing here, Zach, and this isn't to take responsibility or onus off of Russell Wilson because he was really bad the other night. But I think the big thing here is that this coaching is not serving him. For whatever reason, he's not seeing the field, and the coaches aren't helping him to see the field the way we've seen him do in the years past. And so if I have a pit of doubt in my stomach, Zach, it's really not so much in Russell Wilson. And I even said this on the Gut Reaction pod following that stinker against the Colts. The pit in my stomach is I have lost all faith in Nathaniel Hackett. I really have. And I hope to the football gods, all right, that a year from now we're looking back on this going, wow, what a story. He goes from being a lampooned, like laughed at coach to like leading this team to the playoffs, man. Like props to Nathaniel Hackett. I hope that's what we're seeing a year from now, but I sure as heck not expecting it at this stage.
I hope that Hackett can be more Nick Sirianni than Freddie Kitchens. And the Freddie Kitchens comparison is one I can't shake considering how lost he looks as a head coach. You mentioned that the coaches aren't serving Russell Wilson, which I agree with, obviously, but is Russell Wilson serving the coaches? The coaches got KJ Hamler open for the game-winning touchdown. Russell Wilson missed him on that play completely. Russell and the coaches share the blame. It's not one or the other. It's sadly what we talked about last year. It's not that black and white. It's very much gray. There are multiple factors at large for why the Broncos are not up to par right now. And you can defend him. I certainly did for months, despite all the trolls and my mentions that still pop up. Russell Wilson's not playing like a franchise quarterback. Whatever reason that may be, coaches, injury, whatever, he just is not.
I still, though, again, the best predictor of the future is the past. And eventually every quarterback loses the battle to Father Time. I don't think he's anywhere close to that. And so if the past truly is the best predictor of the future, then I still am optimistic. Russell Wilson, despite the worst efforts of the coaching staff or whatever, right? What the worst we might think this coaching staff is, I still think he's got it in him to rise above that and kind of maybe elevate the coaches, for lack of a better term. But he's been so bad that I'm not going to lie and tell you there's not a little doubt. Here's an interesting question here, Zach, from Savage Boy Kev. We try to get at least one Twitch question in every single night, so appreciate you, Kev. Will Patrick Surtain get his second pick six of his career on Justin Herbert again? Zach, what do you think you're going to see from PS2? Because it's not looking like their number one receiver is going to be good to go.
Real quick, Savage Boy had a good comment as well. He took issue, as did I, with the B minus or whatever, B plus receivers. That another comment. I don't agree with that at all. Courtland Sutton is a low end one. Tim Patrick, who the Broncos miss dearly, is a number two. You can argue Jerry Jeudy's a three, but KJ Hamler's a three as well. You add in Montreal Washington to that group as well. I wouldn't call them a second rate unit. In terms of Surtain and Herbert, I looked up Herbert's stats. He only's thrown 2 picks this entire season. From what I see. So it's looking like maybe that won't happen, but as long as PS2 locks down Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, if he's playing, that's all I really care about.
He's due, PS2 is, for a pick. Like, it could be this game. Yeah. And the Broncos are due for some good things. I mean, this is the 6th game of the season for Denver, and it's their 4th in prime time. Every one of them have kind of been lackluster. They won one of them, right? They lost to the Seahawks. Beat the Niners. Barely, but beat the Niners. Lost to the Colts. Maybe this is the one that balances the scales. Zach, I mean, I think most people have probably read the article, the Mile High Roundtable, but we both picked the Broncos to win this. Wait, or am I getting that wrong?
No, I picked them to lose.
You picked them to lose. Okay, I picked the Broncos. You're picking the Chargers. Why?
Reverse psychology. I pick the Broncos to win every week. They end up losing. So maybe if I pick them to lose, they'll actually end up winning. I'm at the point where it doesn't mean anything anymore, the talk. The potential, the promise, the hypothetical, the theoretical, it means nothing to me. I want to see results. So the Broncos now, to me, they lost the benefit of the doubt. They have to prove to me that they're worthy of getting my win prediction every single week, Chad. And it's one thing to drop that game to the Raiders, which was so winnable for them. It's another thing to not be able to score a freaking touchdown at home against the Colts and turn in one of the worst football performances I have ever laid eyes on. Until that changes, I just can't ride with them. Pun intended.
Okay, I picked the Broncos. Just because the Chargers, despite all the preseason hype, have never really scared me. And, the Broncos have been swept by 2 of their 3 divisional opponents in each of the last 2 seasons. Chargers, they've split with. I just have a feeling the Broncos are going to win this game. I couldn't tell you exactly what I expect to see, because the Broncos are just not a team that you can really bet on in terms of those type of questions and whatnot. But let's take a look at these two. All right. Zach and I, we're not perfectly sharing a brain on what the outcome of this thing's going to be tomorrow night. So let's look at the head to head. All right. If you guys are new to, is that coming through? You see that? Oh man, the little toolbar. I wonder how I can get rid of that. This is new. Well, you're just going to have to live with it, I think, gang. Well, what if I do this? Nope, that didn't work. Stand by. Let me try that again. I got to reopen it. Zach, while I figure that out, you want to grab a comment or question real quick? I'm going to get this queued up again.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say about the head-to-head, the Broncos, I think, are 9th in TOP, but they're 30th, 31st, and 32nd in total points, third down and red zone. Tell me how that makes sense. It's just they're so Jekyll and Hyde, so unpredictable. It's not a good matchup for the Broncos on paper, offense to offense. I see some people talking about the Broncos trading. Why didn't we trade for Geno Smith? I mean, the fact that we're even having to get those comments in jest or not is pretty sad. But
All right. I think this is as good as I'm going to be able to make it, I think, tonight. But just ignore that little toolbar thing at the bottom. I'll try and keep everything well above that. But for those of you who might be new to this part of the preview episodes for each game, a green coloration signifies a top 10 ranking. Red, as you can see up here, bottom 10. And if it's black, it's in between. All right. So the Broncos currently are, as far as turnover differential, they're at 0. Meanwhile, the Chargers have taken the ball away 2 times more than they have given it away. Broncos are a top 10 team in time of possession, which makes it all the more frustrating and head-scratching why they're not scoring points. Meanwhile, the Chargers are kind of middle of the pack. And then, Zach, we get into the offense, and look at this. Look at these Chargers, dude. Golly. 5th in yards per game. 8th in yards per play. 9th in points per game. Rushing, they're middle of the pack towards more close, I guess, closer to bottom 10. Passing, they're number 2 in the NFL going into week 6, okay? Haven't given the ball away much. They've only allowed 5 sacks on the season. But then you get down here, Zach, what the heck? They're 18th in third downs, and then they're 22nd in red zone. Meanwhile, well, first of all, let's talk about the implications of this Chargers offense before we kind of compare it to the Broncos. What jumps out to you here?
They're pretty freaking good. And you know what? 18th and 22nd is better than 30th and 32nd, wherever the Broncos are in those categories as well. Yeah, 30th and 32nd. I mean, how are you that bad? It means the Broncos are holding on to the football for a large portion of time and just never punching it into the end zone, which is so maddening and frustrating. But this is a Chargers team that's not turning the football over. Justin Herbert's playing efficient football, injured, I might add. Surprising they're ranked 22nd in rushing because it seems like every week Austin Eckler goes off for like $150. He could have a big day against this Broncos run defense if they don't get that tightened up.
Yeah, so for those who are going to be listening to this on demand, your Denver Broncos currently are the 18th ranked offense in yards per game. They are only one team is worse than Denver in scoring, so Broncos ranked 31st with 15 points per game average. Rushing, they're middle of the pack, 112, which is semi-encouraging considering the injury to Javonte Williams. Passing, they're middle of the road, 19th passing offense. Only 3 interceptions, which puts them in the top 10 again. Russell Wilson, traditionally, that's what made that Thursday night game, Zach, so mystifying, is he's always been a stingy guy with the ball in terms of giving it away. Like, he's always been very careful with that. And that was one thing, too, though, that, you know, every play, every turnover, I hate to bring up a Vic Fangio cliche here, but every turnover kind of has its own story, all right? And that one in the end zone, Zach, where he threw it up and Stephon Gilmore picked it off. Well, if you go back and actually break down the tape on that, especially learning at the feet of someone who really knows football like a Kurt Warner, as yours truly did, you learn that as a quarterback, that ball was thrown because Russell Wilson trusted the receiver, who in that moment was actually Tyree Cleveland, to cross face on that route, to cross his guy's face. Instead, he rounded it out over the top and allowed the corner to get under it to pick it off. So it's on the receiver for that. But at the same time, Zach, shame on Russell Wilson for having that level of trust in a, what is he, 5th guy on the depth chart, wide receiver.
Yeah, that was my point. And not just that, he's matched up against the Colts' best corner and one of the best corners in the whole league in Stephon Gilmore. Why would you thread the needle in that situation? I don't know if that was the intended play call. If it was, shame on Nathaniel Hackett. And that's what I'm saying. It's both. Both are at fault right now for what you're seeing on your screen, all the red, all the black, how bad the Broncos offense is. It's embarrassing because of all the investment they made to not be in the black, to not be where they were, or worse under Pat Shurmur last year.
This just gets my goat, though, Zach. 16 sacks they've allowed on Russ. Russ has always been, it's weird because he's got the reputation for his elusiveness, but at the same time, he's always been one of the most sacked quarterbacks. So it's one of those kind of weird situations there. But
5 for Herbert, though. That's it.
That's it.
It's
And
crazy.
then you look at third down, as you mentioned, Zach, the Broncos are 30th in the NFL, only converting not even one of three. All right. They're 30.6% of the time are they moving the chains. And what big reason for that, by the way, is that too many of their third downs are third and longs. And the calls that are being made on third and long, first of all, that always limits an offense. Third and long calls, man, it's tough, but so it limits the play calling. And then the plays that are called typically aren't conducive to converting. And then Russell Wilson, he's missing his hots. Like he's not seeing the field. He's ignoring almost the entire time the right side of the field. And so defenses, man, they've started to kind of figure out his tendencies in Denver, and they're just shading everything toward what they know he loves to do. So he's got to crack that code. He's got to break that cycle, so to speak, and start throwing these opponents off. But red zone, yeah, as Zach mentioned, Denver dead last. All right, Zach, we look at defense here, and it's almost the exact opposite. Broncos, tons of green. In other words, tons of top 10 rankings defensively. Chargers only have one, and that is that they've been pretty dang good, Zach, at picking off the ball. They've got 6 interceptions, which ties them for 6th most in the NFL. But the Broncos, third-ranked defense in yards. Let's see. The points per game, they're only allowing 16 per game, which is tied for 4th. Middle of the pack rushing defense, 15th. First, your number one net passing defense in the game. Denver Broncos, 3 interceptions, though. 3 fumble recoveries. They had the opportunity, Zach, for like double that, if not more, as far as fumble recoveries. And then sacks, you know what? Everything's been working. Ejiro Evero's got things cooking. Bradley Chubb, 5.5 sacks this season. And then third down, 7th best defense, first in the red zone, Zach. What does that mean for the Broncos tomorrow night?
It's just so crazy. The Broncos defense is 27% in the red zone, first in the NFL. The Broncos offense is 21% last in the NFL. The dichotomy on offense and defense. And with Ejiro Evero, it's crazy. Not only is he doing this with a defense that can't keep its starters on the field because of injury, he's a first-time defensive coordinator in this role, and his defense is looking so much better and more productive than Vic Fangio's. I couldn't be more thrilled with the job he's doing so far, and I hope he stays with the Broncos beyond this year because he will get a head coaching nibble or two. The Chargers defense, though, if I'm a Chargers reporter, analyst, fan, whatever, Brandon Staley is a defensive-minded head coach, and you're ranked 30th, 25th, 20th, 31st. I mean, you bring in Khalil Mack, you bring in J.C. Jackson, you re-sign Derwin James, all for that. That's not very encouraging at all.
He was always fool's gold. He's not going to survive this season. There's a bold prediction for you. I don't really want to focus. People's eyes start glazing over, Zach, when you focus too much on special teams. But for those with us now live, you can kind of see where these two teams rank. The one good thing the Broncos got going for them on specials is that Washington is the truth as a punt returner. And then penalties, your Denver Broncos have 44 penalties they've been flagged for, which ranks them tied 31st. But on penalties accepted, they're actually dead last. It doesn't show it here in this graphic, but 25 accepted penalties going into week 6 was the most in the NFL. And then meanwhile, their opponents they've been good at kind of getting their opponents to commit penalties. So that's good. The Chargers, 7th in penalties committed. So they have been a significantly, Zach, more disciplined team than the Broncos.
Yeah, that was the exact word I was thinking. But instead on defense, you still see their breaking point, especially against the run. Again, if the Broncos want to win this game, and they very much are in striking distance to do so, as you highlight right there, Chad, you got to establish the running game. The O-line has to get pushed. They cannot get blown off the ball. They have to blow their man off the ball and get Murray, Gordon, and Boone going.
This is a great, look, the Chargers they have a good offense. They have one of the best young quarterbacks in the game. But despite all of that, this is actually a great kind of opportunity for the Broncos to slough off all this bad juju and get their act together, because this is a defense ripe for the picking. I'm telling you right now, if Russell Wilson goes out there and plays a game where he is in the zone, this is going to be a defense that's going to offer up opportunities. But when we get back to football being a game of inches, have the last 10, 11 days done anything to help the Broncos figure out, Zach, how better to walk that razor's edge and be on the winning end of those inches instead of, as they've been more often than not this season, the losing end?
I was just looking at Russell Wilson's career record against the Chargers, considering maybe this is his game where he gets back on track. He's 0-2. He's only played them twice, one in 2014, one in 2018, but maybe this is the one, third time's the charm. The time off, it allowed the Broncos to heal the national embarrassment that they deserved and got after that, as you said, stinker against the Colts. But more importantly, 11 days between games, the schedule makers did them a favor, giving them a Monday night game after the Thursday night game. They're an injury-ravaged roster. If anything, the nicks and bruises they've accumulated can help the Broncos, I guess, play better and play healthier, get some of their starters back. Hopefully Simmons comes back. I'm not going to say Ojemudia is an asset, but Dulcich could be as well if he plays. So maybe getting healthier was the thing they needed going into the Chargers game.
The Broken Pirates on Twitch says, scenario, Evero gets head coach offers elsewhere. Does Peyton try to offer him the head coach here to keep him? Well, first of all, I agree with Zach that you look at his future as Ejiro Evero. He's got the potential to be a head coach, but the guys that get interviewed for those positions are the guys from a winning team. If the Broncos are not a winning team this year, he's not going to get head coaching offers, let alone, or even like offers to interview. Because here's a big reason why. Owners, GMs, they have to be able to sell that hire, especially if it's a first-time head coach, to a fan base and to a media market. And if, hey, we got a vacancy and we're we're the Houston Texans as an example, and the guy goes, yeah, we lost a lot of games last year. That's why we have a head coaching vacancy. And we hired a guy who came from a team that also lost a lot of games. Are you excited? Let's go. It just rarely happens. There's always exceptions, Zach, that prove the rule. But if the Broncos get back on the winning track and make something of this season, I think Evero could be a Brandon Staley type where even though he's new and young to his position as a coordinator, the results kind of speaking for themselves. I actually trust what I'm seeing more from Evero, though, as a competency kind of litmus test than I ever did from Brandon Staley with the Rams after he left Fangio's, inner circle.
Just crazy to think about this possible scenario of Peyton firing Hackett, his handpicked head coach, and replacing him full-time with Ejiro Evero, the guy that nobody knew of, the guy that nobody really took seriously at first, but he's shown to be the real deal. I think a more realistic scenario, win or lose, is if Evero starts to get some buzz around the NFL, George Payton can probably pay him a little more, kind of like what Jerry Jones in Dallas did with Dan Quinn. After his head coaching circuit this past offseason, they paid him heavily to stay in Dallas and stay la vie. I hope Evero stays around.
Miguel's saying that if the Broncos, and thank you for the stars, Miguel, if the Broncos would have hired Brian Daboll, they'd be 4-1. Maybe you could be right, my dog. PJ Rivas on Facebook, I think this year's not their year. The team has no identity. Too bad the defense doesn't score every time they're on the field. They might win some games. See you guys at the next meet and greet. Go Broncos. Awesome, dude. We look forward to that, my friend. All right, let's grab one or two more topics, questions in here, and then we'll say goodnight for today. Let me see here. I saw a good one on Twitch. Where did it go? No, we got the Mad Pirates. There's another one. I'll find it. This is the downside when the producer can't make a particular stream. Here's a good question, though, from Savage Boy Kev. Why is Tyree Cleveland even on the field in crunch time? Can I answer this one, though, Zach? And then you can get to the implications of it. Was it was either Judy or Sutton. I think it was Sutton. No, it was Sutton. Sutton, the game or the play before that got him into that position, injured. So he goes out, he's banged up, not injured, but banged up. He has to leave for a snap or two. First snap that he's not on the field was that play. And that spot would have been Sutton running that route. So it's like, did maybe Russ just assume it was Sutton? And that's why he threw it and was like, oh, wait, Cleveland. Welp.
Yeah, their names are kind of similar, Cortland and Cleveland. And you might be honest something considering how much Russell has tried to throw the ball and force the ball. It happened on the last play of the games at Cortland Sutton as well. But yeah, I don't know the personnel grouping. Maybe it was because of the injury, but I would prefer even Alberto in that situation, not the number 6 receiver. You could have had anyone run that route, or maybe how about this? Call a different play. How about a screen? How about some sort of quick hitter over the middle? It didn't have to be a post to Tyree Cleveland in the end zone, but here we are.
I do concur. Nick D in the chat, by the way, that pick, It's always at the end of the day, the onus always falls on the guy who threw the ball. But when the quarterback, you hit your back foot, 2-3 seconds from the snap, you got to when you're expecting your guy to cross face or to run a specific route and he rounds it off or instead of whatever, then it ends up being a takes two to tango situation. It's on Russ and it's on Cleveland, and it's also on the guy for making a good play, right? The defenders, turns out they collect paychecks too. Big E, what's up, bro? He says Hackett needs to learn when he gets in the red zone, just take the points. Don't go for it on fourth down, and you'll win more games than lose to bad teams like the Colts. So are you saying then, Big E, that you questioned the fourth down going for in overtime? Because that was one situation, Zach. There's a lot of things Hackett's done that we can be armchair head coaches and criticize after the fact. And this is fair game as well, but that's not one I really questioned. That game was so weird. And by the time you got down there, 2 minutes and change, if you kick a field goal and it's tied, you're 2 minutes and change from exiting with a tie. Just go for the win. And it was just a bad, Russ did not execute. And he had a wide open KJ Hamler.
And they were moving the ball really well on that drive. No one talks about that, but that was the big Melvin Gordon had a completion there. So I don't fault Hackett for going for it. It's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you go for it, you don't get it, then you're the GOAT, not the good one. And then if you settle for the field goal in another situation, then you get criticized for playing for a field goal, playing not to lose, whatever. In that situation, I agree with Chad. I did like Hackett's aggressiveness. Roll with your offense. You're at home in prime time. Franchise quarterback. Go for it.
I'm going to grab this one from Eric and then one from Lawrence, and then we're going to say goodnight, all right, unless there's any burning super chats that come in. Eric says, tuning in late, no problem, bro. Hoping the line has been shuffled and we turn it around to get a big road win on Monday Night Football, especially since my boy and I will be there at SoFi. Well, that's great to hear, my friend. That's great to hear. And we hope that you get to see a win. I picked the Broncos, but if this is a game, Zach, where they come out and play down or they, it's just another one of these performances we've been seeing, I'm looking at the schedule and what lies beyond week 6, and I'm not picturing any game in which I'll be picking the Broncos in that next frame of games. So this is it, man. This is your chance to, if you're Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett and this Broncos squad, this is your chance to rest back, get back control of the narrative, and kind of exercise the we've been memed demons and remind everybody who you are. So if not, this is one of those where I'll say, hey, 2-4, technically, is it over the season? No, but guys, it's over. It's probably not going to get any better. This is their chance. This is a good opponent for getting right. And I know we've been saying that. We've been calling a bunch of these opponents get right opponents, but seriously, dude, the Broncos have traditionally played well against Justin Herbert, okay? And this defense sucks, dude. It's got some good players on it, but they are not executing.
Yeah, and if there's one thing to say about the Chargers, if there's one team in the division the Broncos have their number, it's the Chargers. They seem to play up for them every year. They at least split with them every single season. So maybe this is the game where they get this year and they get going on the right track. I'm hoping for it. I'm just not expecting it anymore like I have the last couple of weeks.
Lawrence says, can we pull people from the Zach syntax?
USFO? I don't know. I'm just guessing. I don't know what
Let me look. Let me see what it looks like.
A7FO? What is that, Lawrence?
You must be right. It must be USFL.
Oh, American Sevens Football League. I just looked that up. Professional league in the U.S. which plays a 7-man. Oh, so it's 7-on-7s. I mean, can they play right tackle? They probably be better than some of the options the Broncos have right now.
Let me tell you something. One day, Zack Kelberman's going to have a teenage son or daughter, and when that time comes, he's going to be expert level of interpreting the shorthand syntax that the kids use nowadays to communicate. Me, I'm like deaf, dumb, blind. They can pull so much over on me when I catch them on the text. I'm like, what does this mean? Oh, no, Dad, that means this. I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, But Zach, let's call it a night. Yeah. We'll see everybody tomorrow night for the gut reaction.
Yes, sir. That was the MHH podcast, guys. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you enjoyed your Broncos losing free weekend of football. We'll back on tomorrow night after the game to give you our gut reaction on the Broncos versus the Chargers. But follow us on Twitter until that point at the MHH pod. the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and of course our producer Scott at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some of our merch, like I'm wearing, Chad's wearing, go to huddleuppod.com and get your merch on. And don't forget about facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Like that page and follow that page. If you haven't, go to Apple Podcasts and leave your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to get some of that merch each and every single month. But as you see ticking below you, please sub, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like y'all.
By the way, Howie, throwing down big boy stars on Facebook. We do appreciate that, my friend. Thank you. Shout out to our great supporters on Facebook, including Howie, Jacob Foster, Phil Mclaughlin, Miguel Santisteban, Lawrence Rivera, and our Super Chat superstars this evening. Silent One. It just jumped. Silent One, Sam Bam, Cristiano, Plumbob, 19 EHF. Guys, Russell Wilson said on Thursday, or was it Friday? It was Friday. He said this week, everything we want is still on the table. It's still there for the taking. I'm not panicking. I'm not changing my process. He was asked, hey, is there anything about your kind of thing you're going to change? He said, absolutely not. That's a direct quote. Absolutely not. He's trusting that what got him to the dance, that's still going to lead him forward. We'll see. We'll see if Nathaniel Hackett has some better answers. We'll see if Russell Wilson comes to the table. But he's not wrong, Zach, in that what they want is still on the table, but they're rapidly running out of time.
Yeah. Win or lose, though, can't wait to break it down with y'all in real time tomorrow night. Gut reaction. We'll see y'all then. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Mile high salute to you, Eric, and everyone else out there. Take care, and as always, go Broncos.